upcoming CUSMA review. We have with us today the Honourable Melanie Joly, Minister of Industry, and from the Department of Industry we have Francis Bilodeau, Associate Deputy Minister, Innovation, Science and Economic Development. Welcome. And Kendall Hembroff, Associate Assistant Deputy Minister of the Industry Sector. So thank you all very much. We appreciate you being here. Minister, you have 5 minutes or so for your opening remarks, and then we will go on to our usual questions, which will be 5 minutes tight for all of us so that all of the members can make sure that they get their questions in. So if we can have kind of limited answers too, because otherwise you eat up all of the members' time, as you know. If you remember in those days when you were on the other side. So thank you very much for being here. I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Judy. So, Madam Chair, honourable members, it's a pleasure to be here. Merci d'être ici. Canada enters this CUSMA review at a time of profound global change. We're living in a much more complicated, complex and dangerous world. The security environment of the world has deteriorated over the last few years with wars, but also through increased economic tensions, including the current trade war with the United States. And this will continue to be our government's reality. Nous savons qu'il y a des choses que nous ne pouvons pas contrôler.
We know that there are things that we cannot control, but there are many other things that we can control.
What we can control. Here's the plan. First, we'll protect jobs. Second, we'll create jobs. And third, we'll attract talent and investment. And our plan is working. We're seeing 2.6% growth, tracking to be the highest in the G7. Inflation has come down to 2.2%. Wages are up to 3.5% year over year. And in September alone, we created 60,000 jobs, and in October, we created 67,000 jobs. Ces résultats montrent que notre plan produit des
résultats. These results show that our plan is creating concrete results for our economy and for Canadians. The Canadian economy is resilient, but we're continuing to work ceaselessly for our people.
Protect jobs and protect industries. We're working in a reality where we know that we have certain sectors that are the target of the American tariffs. And of course, we're talking about steel, aluminum, auto, and lumber. Industries that are vital to our economic strength and to our communities across the country. And here's what we're going to do for all of these sectors. In the short term, we'll protect our market and we'll offer liquidity to companies. We'll make sure that we support industries and the businesses and the workers in these sectors. And so we did so by tightening the tariff rate quotas on steel imports to 75% of the 2024 levels, a decisive step to protect our market in the short term and ensure the steel sector is protected. In the medium term, we need to make sure that industries can adapt and pivot. They need to be able to seek out new markets and they need to be able to develop new products. Et nous soutenons nos industries grâce à un nouveau fonds de réponse.
Industries, because we have a new strategic response fund of $5 billion, and also we have local or provincial economic development agencies. So we have to work to create a domestic market. Our government does it thanks to investments in defense, also our policies of buying Canadian, and also strategies in terms of housing, and also the major projects.
When I talk about Stellantis, I mean the Dodge Caravan, the Jeep Grand Cherokee, the Jeep Compass, the Jeep Wrangler, the Chrysler Pacifica. And I was clear at my committee appearance at Indu, Stellantis is on the hook. Within a day of Stellantis announcements on October 15th, I sent a letter to Antonio Filosa, the global CEO of Stellantis, stating that the company's actions were unacceptable and that we expected them to honor their legally binding commitments to the Government of Canada. On October 20th, I summoned Jeff Hines, the then Canadian CEO of Stellantis, for a meeting in Ottawa, joined by Vic Fideli, Ontario's Minister of Economic Development, and Lana Payne, National President of Unifor. On October 23rd, together with the Minister of Finance, we announced a 50% reduction in Stellantis' annual remission quota. That means Stellantis has 50% less of a market for its cars without tariffs in our country. On October 30th, I went to Brampton to meet with the strong men and women who build the backbone of Canada's auto industry to let them know that we'll always fight for them. On November 3rd, I triggered the formal dispute resolution process under the contracts. And today, on December 4th, I'm formally announcing that we're serving Stellantis with a notice of default under the contracts. When it comes to protecting auto jobs, we will not let these industries down. We'll stand firm for the sake of our workers, our industries, and our nation, because defending these jobs means defending Canada's economic backbone and the livelihoods of countless families. Now, I've talked to you about the first pillar, which was protecting jobs. Let me talk to you about the second pillar, which is create jobs. And create jobs, and of course beyond this, create industries. In every single crisis, there's an opportunity, and we need to act with audacity, purpose, and determination. While we know some things are beyond our control, creating jobs is really what we can do. And so what we're doing right now is we're investing in defense. Through a defense industrial strategy, we're also investing in major projects across the country. Meanwhile, what we will continue to do is to make sure that we can support our demand for steel, for aluminum, for housing, for lumber. We can do that through, obviously, the Buy Canadian policies and the housing policy that we've put forward. Finally, our third part of the plan, which is to attract. Le troisième pilier du plan, c'est attirer.
Part of the plan is to attract investment, attract talent. And we've started already to attract talent. So we have $1.7 billion to attract 1,000 new talents and 1,000 researchers in Canada. And we're also working to attract investment. And that's why I was able to travel throughout Europe and in Asia to be able to attract new investment and protect sectors that are being targeted by our tariffs.
And of course, I've had the chance to have many discussions already at the Indo Committee in the House of Commons, and I look forward to having a conversation. Thank you so much.
Very much, Minister. On for 6 minutes, Mr. Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, welcome to committee. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. You mentioned Stellantis, so we might as well start there with the auto sector. Were you concerned when you saw the testimony last week from your officials that indicated that no one person read the contract front to back before that was signed?
Well, first and foremost, I think we have to put things in context. If you look actually at what was discussed and what my deputy minister at the time said, is that he was not involved in the redaction of the contract, nor was I, of course, because we were not in our positions at the time. As you know, the contract was signed some years ago, and you were not in your position neither. Now, what is clear is we both since then read the contract, and of course I can answer any questions about that.
When was it that you read the contract?
Well, when the issue...
Was it last week? Was it 2 years ago?
Obviously,
it wasn't 2 years ago because you weren't there, but when did you read it?
So when the issue of Stellantis became really important, which was around October 15...
So you read it?
Of course I read that contract because we got a 24 hours heads up from the global CEO saying that they were moving the Brampton Jeep model, well, the Jeep Compass model,
right,
to the U.S. And we thought that that was completely unacceptable. So we got to it and we found very quickly how to make sure that Stellantis was on the hook.
The testimony last week was that during the contract negotiations, no single person had a view on that contract cover to cover. Does that concern you?
To be frank, it doesn't.
Well, that was the...
No, but like, you can't negotiate a contract without reading it. That doesn't make sense. Like, just listen to what you're saying.
I don't know. The deputy minister said that the individuals involved would not have had full view of the contract. That was the testimony.
There were many contracts that were involved, all of those that are already, not only are they available right now, Adam, but they were available 2 years ago. And the opposition, so basically the Conservative Party, had access to it. And you guys also read the contract.
I think they're just getting
so there's nothing new here.
That's okay. So now that you've read the contract, that's fine. You've read the contract. Were you concerned that the jobs guarantee in that contract, or are you satisfied with the jobs guarantee in the contract? Is it anything less than 100% of Stellantis' footprint at the contract was signed?
See, you know what was my reaction when we got the news from Stellantis, my reaction was, we can't open that floodgate of basically our automakers leaving the country. That was my reaction. And my reaction was also to make sure that everybody around this table is one Team Canada, because we're all fighting for the 125,000 jobs in the auto sector. And so I was in fighting mode, and I was finding how to make sure that we would make Stellantis on the hook. What was clear in that contract is that the investments in the battery plants, which are super important, which we stand for and will continue to defend, were linked to the Brampton facility.
Okay.
And that's why we say it's on the hook.
On October 21st, you said in the House, the opposition on the committee will have access to the contracts. They will discover that we indeed negotiated well. Do you recall saying that?
And I stand by it.
Okay. The jobs guarantee in the contract, is it for anything less than 100% of Stellantis' footprint at the time the contracts were signed?
See, what is happening is when you're dealing with an automaker, you know that there will be...
Minister, you're negotiating a contract.
I didn't negotiate the contract, but what I can tell you is that when you look at an automaker over a 10, 15-year period, you know that there will be changes in models. And sometimes during that time, that lifespan, there will be time where basically there's retooling and that basically people are put on pause to then, of course, being rehired. And that is all negotiated with Unifor. That is all negotiated with the unions. And so that is why it was really, really important to have a job number. But what was most important, Adam, and that's my last point, it was to link the protection of Brampton. Because there was a preoccupation at the time, and I wasn't there, you weren't there, but there was a preoccupation to make sure that we would protect the jobs at Brampton.
Is the jobs guarantee in the contract for less than 100% of Stellantis' footprint at the time the contracts were signed?
Listen, what I can tell you is that there's a job guarantee, and what I can tell you also
is that
there is
a job guarantee, but it's for less than 100%.
For once, there was a link between the new funding that was given to create new jobs in Windsor to the Brampton plant.
So for anything
and
less...
that was really, really important because when you look at it, and we learned from 2009 what the Conservatives did at the time. At the time, there was no job guarantee. So we made sure that that was the case.
Are there executive compensation restrictions like there were in 2009? Was there equity given to the government like there was in 2009? I'm sorry, Minister, but you can't compare those. And plus, that was 15 years ago.
Well, no, I think that they were in
15 years ago.
You are comparing
and you've negotiated,
the same
your
type
government
of
negotiated.
Mr. Chair, the translation is not good because we have
Minister,
two persons in the
your
same
government
time.
negotiated. It sounds like your government negotiated a $15 billion corporate subsidy to Stellantis without 100% jobs guarantee for the footprint of Stellantis at that time.
I think you're mixing up things.
That's what it sounds like.
To be frank, you're mixing up things, okay?
So
in 2009,
will you say what the percent of the, will you say
Madam
what the
Chair,
percentage?
I just want to be able to answer.
Let her finish because your time is up, and I want everybody to have a shot here today.
Yeah, of course.
Minister?
In 2009, when you negotiated and shook hands with GM and Chrysler at the time, there was no job guarantees, and following that, the Oshawa plant was closed for GM. The Windsor plant for GM was closed. The Ford assembly plant following that was closed, and the Orion bus assembly plant in Mississauga was closed. It was devastation. And we were the first government to bring back jobs in the auto sector because we were able to create around 3,000 jobs in Windsor, and we were able to create around 3,000 jobs in St. Thomas. So it was really good investments.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
Madame Lapointe, please, for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Chair. Welcome, Minister Joly. I'm very happy that you're with us today. In 2018, there was the renegotiation of CUSMA, and you were already involved, Minister, and I remember that there were issues in terms of the acceptance for culture and protection of French. So we're looking at what's happening in Montreal, where culture's industry is very important. So can you explain the alignment of government on these very sensitive issues in Quebec and for all francophones outside of Quebec? Thank you. So the cultural exceptions, very important, especially in the renegotiation of CUSMA and for all our free trade agreements. So we put it in all our free trade agreements, but also we're part of the Convention on Cultural Diversity of UNESCO, which is very important, which is really our anchor in order to negotiate cultural exceptions. It's important because it allows the government after that to create legislation to protect our culture, to make the necessary investment without form of retaliation on the part of the U.S. and Mexico in this case, to support the Canadian Media Fund, Radio-Canada, CBC, National Film Board, and Telefilm. So yes, and every time I work with the Heritage Minister, the Minister of Canadian Culture and Identity. Thank you for that explanation. You know that my county is in the Lower Laurentians, and the aerospace industry is in Montreal, but also there's a lot in the Lower Laurentians. And Quebec has a strong concentration of businesses in aerospace, energy, and food technology and energy sector. So how will these sectors be protected in the next form of the free trade agreement? Well, those sectors will have an advantage because the supply chains between countries in the aerospace industry involves Canada, the U.S., and Canada. We see that American companies have invested in the Lower Laurentians, so Textron, Eswirus, and we also think Bombardier, that they have plants in the U.S., so we know that everything is integrated and coordinated. But I would also add that it's not necessarily linked to CUSMA review, but it's related to our will to manage the consequences of these tariffs. So we're creating a strategy for defense, and we think that the aerospace industry will be a big winner because our basic rule in the strategy is to build in Canada. And so when we have a major procurement for defense, our objective will be to create jobs in Canada and to build plants in Quebec as well. So that'll be good news for my region to know that will ensure that defense investment also bear fruit in our part of the country, which I know very well. How does the government intend to use the review to increase the competitiveness in our sector? Canada is the only country of the G7 to have a free trade agreement with all other G7 countries. And the Minister of International Trade could give you more information on the free trade agreements that we have with other countries. It's quite high. When I meet companies wishing to invest in Canada, because I'm also responsible for investment made in Canada, our access to various markets in the world is an advantage for us that's very convincing. So in those circumstances, I think it will help our competitiveness. And there are different measures in the budget, including tax credits, that are very positive for attracting investment. But to come back to CUSMA, our goal will have to be to continue to have access to the American market and the Mexican market, knowing that we have some sectors that are targeted by tariffs that are unjustified, and we have to look after that, and that's my job, and it's part of my functions. I received questions in terms of industries that work in steel processing, and they were talking about problems causing them these unjustified tariffs of 50% and 25%. What can I tell them? Well, they're right to say they're unjustifiable. They're direct victims of these tariffs. The way I see things, if we're in a trade war, the battle is on the economy, and the front lines are the sectors that are touched. In Quebec, it's aluminum, steel. Throughout the country, in Ontario, it's very much the automobile sector, and we know that softwood hurts everywhere. or is hurting everywhere in many regions in the country, certainly in Quebec. So my job is to be able to support people who are on the front lines to help those entrepreneurs who are very, very concerned because they have to manage the impact of the tariffs. So they have to diversify their exports greatly and develop new products. And my role is to help them to adapt and to pivot. So it's a task that's demanding, but we had the population that gives the mandate to do this.
Please, for 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Merci pour votre présence.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to be here, Madam Minister, and also to your officials who are here. I wasn't going to ask this question, but my colleague mentioned culture, gave me the idea. So with the cultural exception, we'll keep it completely. Maybe you won't be the only one acting on that. But there's the... Well, do you think that they might invoke the reprisals clause, or is there an exemption from that? Will it be total, or will it be only an exception chapter by chapter, as with Europe? Well, I'm not in charge of bargaining. The Prime Minister is in charge of this, and he's supported by Minister Leblanc. But what I can tell you is that as a Quebec MP and a Quebec Minister, for me, it's important to be able to protect in the free trade agreement that cultural exception, and the Prime Minister mentioned it in his election campaign and committed that this be protected. So you would be very favourable for there not being any reprisals provisions. Well, I don't know enough about what you're telling me, and I don't want to mislead you as to what's being currently discussed at the table. Oh, that's good. No, that's I'm fine with that answer. So in terms of culture, let's go from culture to agriculture. We had Minister Leblanc here. He said there will be no harming supply management, and can't do it through the back door either. Yes, that's our position, and we also affirmed that in our election campaign, and my colleague said it. He's the one who's working with the Prime Minister and who's in charge of that, so I agree with him. So we can't get around through the back door. No, we always already worked to develop something with the Bloc Québécois. And speaking about softwood, I don't have in my writing. Well, I have little trees, but there's no forest industry. Yes, it would be sad not to have any trees. But we're talking about total tariffs that go beyond 45%, and that's very, very serious for the industry. Can we expect a specific strategy for the softwood industry? I know that my colleague Tim Hutchison, the Minister of Natural Resources and Energy, is working not only to put into place the plan that we have to support the softwood sector and the forest industry more generally, but also to have a plan to help businesses adapt and pivot. It's sure that it's a provincial jurisdiction, a Quebec jurisdiction, but also from the federal government. So we're there to provide support to attenuate or mitigate the effect of the tariffs. We worked with the BDC to offer a solution to banks. So banks are offering solutions, but the risks are assumed by the government and by BDC. So that's the approach we're using. And I imagine that my colleague has worked with the provinces as well, because we know that the logging rights and everything is provincial jurisdiction. Yes, so this is global for everything. It's not specific to softwood. Well, the BDC help is specifically for softwood, and it's accessible. Yes, it is. And I'm hoping that the banks will go even further. I think that the problem that we see in softwood currently is that entrepreneur. We're talking about taking more risks and going more into debt. But banks are very allergic to risks. So we created a solution that would allow banks to take these risks because we're assuming the risk. So we want to ensure that businesses in softwood lumber don't go into a spiral of debt. So that's why we have a specific approach. And that's why I want banks to be able to pay out more quickly. So is it really loans that are the best strategy for this? It doesn't seem to be. It's not a subsidy. We think that this approach for softwood via the BDC, so offering liquidity, and for processors, we also have help from the regional economic development agencies. And in that help, there's a part of it that's not reimbursable. And that policy by Canadian that was announced on September 5th, we're talking about prioritizing Canadian raw materials in federal contracts, so 25 million. And on November 9th, we heard the intention to implement that policy towards the end of 2025. Yes, we had to have the budget accepted. We still need a few important votes to do that, and I hope we can count on the bloc for the budget. I won't say anything at this point, so I can represent you as a lawyer. So that's it. So can we expect this before the end of the year? Supposing everything goes well, the implementation will be progressive. So there are already measures that have been taken, but this will happen in the first and second quarter of 2026 for buying Canadian. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to our guests for being here. Madam Minister, thank you for being here with us. I would like to talk to you about the American tariffs. I'm from Beauce. We're near the U.S., and we do a lot of business with the Americans, and we've been attacked very hard in steel and in wood. I made an economic trip in Montreal and in Beauce. I'm an entrepreneur. I understand the issues. I understand the concerns of these businesses. Madam Minister, none of these businesses wants funds from the Canadians. They just want to deal with the Americans. Yes, I understand. I've met a lot of entrepreneurs, and I understand the situation currently, and I can see it because I also make visits everywhere, especially through Quebec, because I'm in charge of regional economic development in Quebec, but also all over the country. And one thing is clear. When I meet people in the affected sectors, I know that there is an anxiety, but I know that they also know that the American president and the American administration is very unpredictable. And they know that we're there to help them to pivot, because regardless of what might happen, there can always be unpredictability, uncertainty. And we know that in business, what is the most frustrating is risk management. And geopolitical risk is currently omnipresent. And that's why we offer help, we offer some equity, and we try to control what we can control. So I've met several entrepreneurs in Beauce. They have told me they want to be able to sell more in Canada and the rest of Canada, and also to France and to the European Union. But you can't pivot. You can't do that in 2 days or 2 years even. I know that. And I know that Beauce is on the American border, so there's a very high dependence on the American market. But we will work with those entrepreneurs to go to other markets. So in terms of programs like Buy Canadian, all that, you have to have a business that does about $2 million to make business. So why do you only encourage the large factories? $2 million? It's a major industry, but it's still a small or large industry. Ask those questions to the Chamber of Commerce. So why do the smaller ones not have access to that program? So I'd be happy to work with you Jason, to see if there are businesses in particular that are having problems. We can find solutions in these sectors that are hit by tariffs. These are there are many of these industries, so I think you know the regions. You come to both from time to time. I'll take as an example the center of Quebec or Chaudière-Appalaches and Saguenay. I know those people. In addition to American tariffs, there's one other thing they talk about constantly. It's labor. They don't have enough labor. We have the lowest unemployment rate in Canada. We proposed renewing the temporary foreign worker proportion below 5.5%. There's something in the budget that hasn't been explained. They're just waiting for you to explain what's happening there, and it's up to you to control that. The Prime Minister is certainly aware of this. He's working with the businesses that are involved. I've heard about this concern in the regions also when I was in the rural regions. And I hope we can work with the Conservative Party. When the opposition leader came, he said he was against temporary foreign workers. So people were shocked. So 5.5% unemployment. I don't want to play politics here, but we need those people. So I'm just asking you, when can we have the answer that we can give to our businesses? My goal is to be able to work with you, with colleagues, so that it can happen, because I know that it's important. I hear it. When I go in Trois-Rivières in Quebec, I was in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean on several occasions, because it's a region that's been strongly affected because of aluminum. I have friends and acquaintances who are in business, and I hear about it, and we're in the work of developing solutions, and we'll work at this. But it's very dangerous to politicize the file of temporary foreign workers, and I find it really too bad that the leader of the opposition did this.
You're a fighter, and we can see it, we can feel it in your words, in the way that you speak about how you're protecting workers. I feel it. Mm-hmm. And you started your remarks by talking about how important it is to be Team Canada, to be united. And I hear this everywhere. I hear it in my community. They'll speak, you know what, this is what I'll hear. I like when the Liberals and the Conservatives, NDP, Green Party, everybody working together, understanding how big a threat this is. People know that. And they want to see everybody working together. And that is imperative. That is probably the best tool. We could talk about Buy Canadian, the Strategic Response Fund, our diversification. But the number one thing we have is keeping Canadians united as Team Canada, understanding this. And thank you for doing the job that you're doing on that. And that's my question, is that you go to the front lines. You were talking about, meeting with Unifor, Lana Payne, bringing in, the CEOs, having everybody at the table understanding that we got to get to the right solution, the right deal. Can you tell me how you work through that process, how you meet with the front lines, how you get that message across?
So different ways. I must say, my department is very much in solution mode, because we get so many companies coming to see us, businesses, entrepreneurs, wanted either to get help because they're in the tariff sector, the sectors that are impacted by the tariffs, or want to adapt and pivot and or invest. The difference is quite stark, because we're the only country right now of the G7 that has zero tariff overall on our economy. I was just in Japan and Korea. They both have 15% tariffs. We know that that's the case for the EU. We know that, UK is 10%. And so on certain sectors, things are going well, actually, and our plan is working. And I just mentioned 67,000 jobs created in October, 60,000 the month before in September. But in the sectors that are impacted by the tariffs, the pain is real. And so we provide the information to the negotiating team with what are the impacts of the tariffs, what are our, basically our different sectors that are under us, which are, many, many different sectors, except from basically natural resources and energy. And that's how the Prime Minister and Dominic LeBlanc, Minister LeBlanc, and the clerk and the chief of staff, also of the Prime Minister, are able, and Kirsten Hellman, our ambassador to the U.S., are able to negotiate. So a lot of the information actually provides, it's basically market information that we have that is provided to the negotiators.
Thank you. And what I also hear on the street is people want to buy Canadian. They want to make sure. But at a bigger level, when we're looking at some of our infrastructure or building our homes, our Build Canada Homes program, how does your office work with industry to be able to have them retool or change kind of their business dynamic to be able to take this opportunity and be able to grow our country?
So I'll give you the example of steel. And we haven't talked about it, but, the only Canadian steel plant that is Canadian-owned is actually Algoma. And we were very, very preoccupied with what was going on at Algoma, even before the tariffs. And, then it became 25% tariffs and eventually became 50% tariffs. So I was making calls to Seaspan, the shipyard in Vancouver, that is actually part of our national shipbuilding strategy, to make sure that they would be taking orders, and making sure that they're buying steel out of Algoma. I was calling Jim Irving at Irving Shipyard and meeting also with the CEO in Halifax to make sure that they would be also buying from Algoma. Really working with the FASCO in Hamilton also with new projects to have steel cans and different ways to be able for them to be making the right type of steel. One thing that is really, really important to remember when it comes to the steel sector is the entire business model has been developed on supporting the U.S. automakers on the other side of the border. And that business plan doesn't work anymore with 50% tariffs. And by the way, the 50% tariffs are all on the steel industries around the world. And so that is why it's really important right now, and I'm heading to Algoma in the coming days, to meet the workers, to meet, the union, to meet also the leadership team, that they
Thank
be
you
able...
Minister, I'm sorry to interrupt. Thank you very much.
I was going to say, are we not over time?
Savard Tremblay for 2.5, please.
Oh, come on, give it to Coop.
Oui, merci.
Okay,
Ben,
it's Tremblay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, maybe we'll go back to what we were
Block
talking
is
about
here.
on the Buy Canadian program. Do you see that there's opposition or fear on the American side? So I'm not negotiating every day, but I haven't heard any concerns. You have to remember that the Americans themselves have protectionist legislation in terms of procurement. Yes, for their businesses, but probably they would like that their businesses continue to benefit from business. No, I'm not speaking personally about the American administration, but you have not experienced any pressure, and you don't think this would harm negotiations? As a former foreign affairs minister, I continue to follow developments in geopolitics because there's a relationship between my job of being in charge of the economy in Canada and what's happening in the world. And protectionist policies are emerging everywhere in the world these days. That's why I had discussions with the European Minister of Economy, Stéphane Séjourné, to know how, while they want to protect their steel market, how we could work with them so that we can continue to have free trade despite the environment of protectionism. Things are developing so quickly that we're trying not only to negotiate, but also to diversify our markets and to draft new rules, because the international commercial rules are no longer working. On another topic, on an idea of harmonization, and this idea of Chinese EVs. So harmonize the tariffs we have there. So we increased them, Canada increased them about a year ago. So it's now 100% like it is for the U.S. Is that still something that we need to do? We're not thinking of changing that because Mexico also increased them by 50%. So could we use that in negotiations even though you're not negotiating? You yourself? No, I won't make any hypotheses here for you. But one thing is clear, we have to protect our automobile sector because tariffs of 25% that are touching 125,000 jobs has an effect on Ontario. And if Ontario is affected, the Quebec economy is also affected. The economy of the whole country is. So it's very important for me that we can defend that sector.
So in your opening statement, you referred to steel, lumber, and other critical sectors. So steel, aluminum, autos, lumber. My understanding is that those tariffs that are imposed by the U.S. are done so under the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, Section 232, and then in the case of lumber, additionally anti-dumping and countervailing duties. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
Well, yeah, it's a fact. There's also a presidential, executive order for fentanyl. Fentanyl-related tariffs under the IEEPA.
And those would be the IEEPA tariffs.
Exactly, but they're on pause.
Right. And so you're following the court case in the United States, Voss Selections, which is dealing with the IEEPA tariffs?
I am, but as MP, like you, because I'm not in charge of the negotiation.
So my understanding, and I hope this is yours as well, as we've just established, if the Supreme Court in the United States strikes down the IEEPA tariff, that will provide no relief to the industries I just mentioned. Is that correct? Because those tariffs are imposed under different laws in the U.S.
My job here is not to make any form of hypothesis, neither...
It's not a hypothesis, it's just fact, and your job here is to speak on behalf of these industries, so I just want to know, what's your understanding of that? And if you don't know, that's problematic, so...
Jacob,
yes
please,
or no?
Can you...
Hey, come on. Don't use first names, please.
So...
If she answers, yeah.
I always answer.
Respond.
I think that there's a lot of, as I said in French, many unpredictability linked to this administration. The U.S. Supreme Court decision is obviously something that the negotiating team is following, and I must say, the entire world is following.
Don't know what effect that will have.
Obviously, I won't, in front of this committee, develop any form of strategy or tactics that the government could take. I think that overall, we should work as one Team Canada to see what could be the impacts eventually. But I'm not here to make any form of, analysis on what could be the impact on Canada or the world.
I guess I would suggest it's concerning that the industry minister has no analysis of what will happen if that's the case.
No, I'm sorry, but...
Then tell me what your view is then.
My job is to help the sectors here in Canada while the negotiating team is negotiating, and they have also their own strategies. And obviously the world is following what's going on in the U.S. every single day. We were following what was going on in Tennessee yesterday. We're following what's going on in Miami at the electoral... So we have a team, and I'm talking here, I used to be in charge of foreign affairs, so I know that we have a fantastic embassy in the U.S.
Thank you,
and
Minister.
They're doing that
I'm going to move on
because
I have limited time. I appreciate
go ahead.
that. Obviously, a large part of our bilateral trade is defense production with the United States. A few weeks ago, in response to questions about the F-35, you made comments that you said you didn't believe there had been enough jobs created or industrial benefits out of the F-35 program. You repeated that yesterday, actually. And then in response, Ambassador Hoekstra made some comments suggesting that that was an impediment to our trade negotiations. You, as you said, were foreign minister. You were at the very first party at Mar-a-Lago with the president. If anyone should have known that injecting uncertainty into the F-35 deal would piss off the Americans, I would have thought it was you. So my question is, why would you do that at the 11th hour? Why inject uncertainty into this negotiation?
A couple of things. I was not there at the first party at Mar-a-Lago, so your facts are wrong. Second, we took a decision following the imposition of tariffs against us, which I think Canadians support. My question to you is, do you support or not the decision of putting on pause the F-35 contract? Yes or no?
I'm asking you questions, not
Well,
the other way
yeah,
around.
I'm asking
you don't
you
ask
questions.
here.
Goes both ways.
No,
No, it doesn't.
Yes,
actually.
it does.
No, it
Not a
doesn't.
committee.
Well,
this
you
morning,
know, this is parliament. This is part of parliamentary committee.
I'm
This
just
is
asking
democracy.
you why you did that.
But Jacob, yes or no? Is that the position of the
30
Conservative
okay.
Party? Yes or no?
At the Defense Committee this morning, the Minister of National Defense said the F-35 review was his file, and he said he was reviewing it, quote, at the request of the Prime Minister. Did the Prime Minister ask you to review that as well?
I'm in charge of industrial benefits for defense contract. That's the role of
So you are reviewing the F-35 as well?
For industrial benefits, of course. Yes, absolutely. And that's why I think we didn't get enough and we need more. And I hope the Conservative Party is in favor of that. If not, you know, we want to know.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Lavoie, please. The floor is yours.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry that I'm not there today, but I needed to be in my riding. Hello, Minister. I'm very happy to have you here with us today. And I have two questions to ask you, and I'll ask them one after the other and give you the time to respond. You know my story. I worked in banks for many years for funding businesses. What I noticed a lot is that we were funding all sectors of the economy. In all sectors, there are ups and downs. They're a bit like cycles, and often the best businesses, what happened when things were going badly in their field, they would invest, and then they could do better. And so I'm comparing with the situation currently. Things are going badly. We have tariffs. Things are not going well. But I'm seeing that there are several businesses have considered that it was a good time for them to invest currently, so that when we get out of this crisis, they might be the best on the market. So my first question is, how can EDC support them currently with subsidies and investment so that they can take advantage of this time to increase their productivity? And my second question, briefly, you know, I'm MP for Beauport-Limoilou. We have the Quebec port that's in my backyard. It really is. And you were in Japan recently. You're talking to people in Japan who are saying, listen, people want to do business with us. It's time. So I'm now wearing my deputy hat for my riding because we have strategic infrastructure right near us and wonderful businesses. My second question is, how can we, with external markets, foreign markets, take advantage of our structure and have our Beauport-Limoilou businesses do well? Thank you, Steve.
Jeez, this guy talked for like half
his time. For the first question, we have many, many different programs for support. The biggest one is the Strategic Response Fund. So there's a $5 billion fund, which includes the former Strategic Investment Fund that was often used, the SIF, and that was to attract investment, especially from abroad, or help Canadian businesses to adapt and pivot. But now we decided to offer this funding to sectors that have been the victims of tariffs. So this $5 billion is very important. It allows businesses, such as those of in the sector of steel or also aluminum, to start manufacturing aluminum that will be responding to our domestic requirements, including defense. So usually what we do is send it to the U.S. and it comes back in a processed form. So that's part of the discussions I'm having with the major players in aluminum and also with smaller businesses. We also help businesses in the aluminum sector to export their products. If we look at Alouette, first trimester, 4% of their production went to Europe, and second quarter, 52% of their production of this smelter went to Europe. So that's also a part of the programs for the offers we make to these companies affected by tariffs. So the major players have access to the Strategic Response Fund, and the smaller players have access to EDC for Quebec regions, ADEC. And this is related to the question that Jason asked me. And there's a part of it that's non-reimbursable. So we know that small businesses often are not as strong economically than the bigger players. And there's a fund that's dedicated to SMEs that are affected. And for softwood, there are other programs that are offered, and I already answered those questions when Simon Pierre asked me about the softwood lumber field. And finally, yes, there is an interest for Canada. Canada is very well rated because we're perceived as a country that's able to, in spite of everything, manage the dynamic with the Americans quite well in a very difficult situation, where within Western democracy, the question is how to manage this relationship with the U.S.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre. Merci à vous, merci à vos fonctionnaires. Nous allons prendre quelques instants pour...
Oh, what? I really wanted to see Cooper get around in there. That's it? They're done? Okay, we're going to switch over to... we'll do... Oh, OGGO suspended? What happened with OGGO? Okay, we'll switch over to see Robertson. Dun, 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 dun.
Let
me just grab it. Also, Josh, let me read what you said. No further discrepancy. In other words, Phil, what's his name? Deputy lied to committee and is in contempt of Parliament. Switching for witnesses. Okay. Well, we'll tune into OGGO as soon as it comes back. Let me just grab a conservative round for Gregor Robertson here. I'm just scaling back a little bit so we can catch a good con round. And then we'll just switch to OGGO as soon as it comes back. Why is this taking so long to load? No, that's a lib round. Lib. We'll just go to the first round. It's definitely some conservative on the first round. Second hour of OGGOs for Public Works. Okay.
capitalization of the catalyst for modern methods.
He's still doing his statement.
Infrastructure.
OGGO is government operations and estimates.
Complete, connected, and resilient community.
Government, in fact, during the campaign promised to do 500,000 homes a year, and yet starts have stalled, basically. So given the scale of the housing crisis, could you tell this committee what concrete benchmarks your government is using to decide whether the incremental steps you've announced if they're going to work, if they are working, and if you need to take bigger steps?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. So the initial commitment to implement a first-time home buyers GST break is still not through the House, as members will know. We want to see that implemented as soon as possible because it will create opportunity for first-time homebuyers, up to 50,000 first-time homebuyers to access housing, save $50,000
Minister,
on
I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second. I don't need you to describe the programs to me. I'm reasonably familiar with them. What I want to know is what benchmarks have you used, are you using, to determine whether you need to do more than just the first-time homebuyers rebate?
Well, the focus initially to the member is to provide that support to first-time homebuyers, to young Canadians who can't access the market currently. That should be our first priority right now, is to make sure we get an affordability measure to young Canadians during these times. And that's a significant investment, about $4 billion worth of tax revenue.
What kind of numbers do you need to see for you to know that's working?
Well, the numbers that we look at CMHC is our top source of research and data. They have a significant team that provides that for the industry and obviously for governments. And CMHC data reflects the realities across the country, as well as market data that we see as well. And obviously, it's important to track all of it. The housing starts are different in different markets across the country. Obviously, the GTA and Vancouver are very low in terms of housing starts right now, but other markets are doing very well.
Okay, thanks, Minister.
Alberta.
It's clear that you don't actually have a number or any benchmark that you're going to share with us now. But let's go back to that interview. In that same interview, you said, and I quote, "We can't roll the dice with some of these bigger moves. We'll try some incremental steps and see if they make a difference. If they don't, then maybe we will have to make some bigger moves." Builders are telling us that pre-sales are collapsing right now, particularly in the GTA and the Lower Mainland. Projects are being shelved. Employees are being laid off. So how does the government justify waiting for results when these delayed decisions mean thousands of job losses and fewer homes getting built?
Through the chair, I think the most troubling is the delays that the member's party has done to this first-time homebuyers tax break. It has been before the House of Commons since June. It still is not through due to the procedural delays that the opposition has put forward. That's held back an opportunity to provide up to $50,000 per first-time homebuyer to get the housing market going. And as I said, it's different in different markets. So providing a broad GST break in markets that are doing very well, for example, in Montreal or in some of the markets on the prairies.
Minister, I just want to stop you. I just want to stop you for 1 second, because you're trying to put the blame here on Conservatives, but the fact of the matter is the situation is dire. You would agree that we're in a housing crisis?
I agree, we're in a housing crisis. That's why we shouldn't be delaying the first-time
I guess my question then
tax.
is, how if it is in fact a crisis, what on earth makes you think that incremental steps and waiting to see what happens is a good approach?
Through the chair, when I speak of incremental, $13 billion for Build Canada Homes is it's an unprecedented investment strictly in non-market affordable housing. $1 billion into transitional supportive housing because homelessness is a crisis. We are focused on where we have a crisis and those direct interventions with significant investment. As I outlined with the National Housing Strategy and with Reaching Home, these are the largest investments Canada has ever made in homelessness and affordable housing, and we're taking it to the next level. We need the rest of the House to support.
If we need 500,000 units a year, we need 500,000 units a year for the next several years, which your government promised to do, which the Prime Minister promised during the campaign. We're talking about trillions with a T of investment in housing. So $13 billion might seem big to you, but we know full well that one of the biggest impediments to getting homes started and getting homes built is the cost of local government and the delays at the local level, particularly in the Lower Mainland and the GTA, where this is the epicenter of the housing crisis. It's where the situation is, in fact, the worst. Economists like Mike Moffat, who has advised your government on a number of occasions on housing, has warned that without decisive action, Canada risks a prolonged construction slowdown and an even deeper supply gap. If the government is so reluctant to make a big move, and I will challenge you that $13 billion is not a big move, what's your plan to get the private sector moving again and building in some of these centers where it's too expensive?
Here, here. That's a great question.
Yeah, well, the private sector is delivering a lot of housing in most of the Canadian markets. It's Vancouver and Toronto that are challenged, and that's where the first-time homebuyers tax can make a real impact. That's where apartment construction loan program is delivering record levels of rental housing, working with the private sector very directly through CMHC. We're seeing housing starts about 4.6% up year to date versus last year. So the industry is building right now. We have to be looking forward several years, and that means investing significantly.
Thank you, Mr. Aitchison. Monsieur Joseph. Monsieur Joseph. Monsieur Joseph, for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Congratulations to you for your work. As you know, I'm the member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. In my riding, there is an unprecedented homelessness crisis that has lasted for 6 years. I've only been here for 6 months, and you've been on the job for maybe 6 to 7 months. Everyone is looking at our government. The 2020-25 budget announced $1 billion for transitional measures with care. When I talk about care, I'm talking about services. But before that, we had a program called Operation Reach Home. Community organizations that help these people.
We can just skip through this. We can just skip to a con round.
Yes. I'm talking
the people who do
visit
the
an
work.
actual shelter and see what the problems are with the. Time is from the beginning.
From the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, they subbed in Garnet.
Back in October, officials from your department spent $97,000 on a getaway on a conference to get inspiration on the homelessness crisis. And you had just admitted in your earlier testimony that it's a crisis. And of course, it's a crisis that's caused by this Liberal government. Were you aware of this crisis? Or were you aware of this $97,000 being spent on this conference?
I attended the conference, spoke at the conference, and met with a number of Government of Canada staff who were at the conference, which is the most significant homelessness conferences.
$97,000 to. And I'm going to read the purpose of it. According to the documents we have, the purpose of this conference is to arm policymakers, funders, researchers, advocates, community leaders, and frontline workers with inspiration, end quote. Do you think that's a good use of money?
Through the chair, I think it's the most important homelessness conference in the country, and that's consistent with the funding that's been allocated in previous years to make sure that the Government of Canada is present and represented, and the programs that we provide can be communicated.
Do you feel inspired? The purpose was to get inspiration, so do you feel inspired?
I think the purpose was for education. It was also for the number of our programs to be able to meet with all of the local proponents. All the organizations that work on homelessness were able to connect to
onto
our
a homeless
employees.
shelter in Ottawa, or maybe back home in Vancouver. We know homelessness was up 38% while you were Vancouver's mayor. Maybe it would have been better just to visit a homeless shelter, or it would have been better use of money or abuse of time.
Excuse me, we do have translation again as an issue. It's just in English. Okay, is it now being interpreted to French? Your time has paused. Testing, testing. Are you interpreting to French? It's good? Okay. Continue, Mr. Ho.
The minister can answer the question.
It's a very important conference for our government staff who administer the programs. When we're investing billions of dollars to do the work, we need to connect with the people who do the
Visit an
work.
actual shelter and see what the problems are with the folks that are.
Many of us that work on this homelessness initiative visited shelters. I understand
Okay,
it on the ground.
so
this is
I'm
the
going to
largest
continue
gathering,
moving
a
now.
conference
So
of people working
I'm not
on
getting
it.
an answer from you, so I'm going to move to the next question. So
I'm giving you an
your
answer.
department officials admit that you faked a $32,000 construction site on TV for cameras when the Prime Minister made a housing announcement a few months ago. Do you think that's a good use of money?
Through the chair, well, that's incorrect as well. Those homes were constructed on the site. The whole purpose with modular housing is it can be put together and taken apart readily.
They were disassembled.
One of those
afterwards.
homes was sent to Nunavut
Could it not have
immediately
gone
thereafter.
to?
The other was taken apart and moved to another site where it was constructed.
You spent $32,000 on it, which you could have, at least go to an existing site and then maybe do the photo op there. But you chose to build one just to disassemble it, and then $32,000 that could be used towards a down payment for a young family. Actually, $32,000 after 10 years of this Liberal government is no longer enough for a down payment. So you don't think that you could have gone to an existing backdrop, maybe an existing construction site as a backdrop?
I think it was important to demonstrate the effectiveness of modular housing, that it can be put together quickly on a site and moved off of the site. That modular home went to Nunavut, where it is. We're doing 700 homes with the government of Nunavut that are modular builds.
I want to go into the latest Parliamentary Budget Watchdog report, which they said, quote, the government has not yet laid out any plan to achieve their goal, their housing goal. And your election campaign promised to build 500,000 homes a year, to double it, by adding an extra 250,000 homes per year. And the latest report said it's just going to build 5,000 homes per year over the next 5 years. Do you see that as progress? I mean, that's only, 2%? Of the target reach? Do you think that's progress?
Through the chair, the PBO report does not take into account all of the housing programs that are currently operating. It's strictly looked at the Build Canada Homes investment of $13 billion, and when you gross that up to the number of homes that will be built, it came up about 87,000 homes from that $13 billion is what their estimate is. It did not account for all of the housing investments that are being made.
$500,000 per year, so over 5 years that'll be 2.5 million homes. I mean that's still a drop in the bucket. Do you agree?
No, I don't. I don't agree with the assumptions made in that report, which do not account for all of the housing programs that this government.
Liberal mouthpiece that's given the report.
No, the report does not account for all of the housing programs, such as the National Housing Strategy, our largest housing program. The numbers for that are not included going forward in that report. So it disregards that this government is very committed to affordable housing and we're already in a renewal process with the National Housing Strategy, working with provincial and territorial ministers. We made a commitment about that with those ministers in September this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Thank you,
Okay, let's skip ahead back to another con round.
Support of housing. There were a lot of meetings. There was a lot of information. We are connected to the people on the ground who are doing.
There we go. Right around here somewhere. Right at the start of a round.
Particularly, we do have a...
Right here.
Madame Cobena?
Yeah.
Cobena?
Perfect.
For 5 minutes. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr.
We're
Chair.
going to turn her up a bit.
My questions are for Minister Robertson. Thank you for being here and for giving us your time. I represent the riding of Newmarket Aurora. In Newmarket, particularly, we do have a homelessness problem. And I have to ask you about this $97,000 spent. I cannot find a way to justify this to the people in my riding that see it. They see the people, our neighbors on the streets and struggling to find home and shelter and food. I can't walk up to them and say, I know you're homeless, but it's okay. We spend $97,000 or the minister spent $97,000 to learn about it. How do you suggest I justify that to the people in my riding?
Through the chair, so the investment in government staff who were attending, and in many cases making contact with many of the homeless providers and support services, These are Government of Canada employees who are there to help
It's not an investment.
assist.
It's not an investment. It's an
They're
expense.
making sure
it's not an
that we are
investment.
connected
it's not
to
going
the
create
people on the ground who are doing the work on homelessness.
There's not going to be an asset. It's not an investment. It's an expense. It's an expense. We're not going to see a return on that money. It's not an investment. And I have to justify it to the people in my riding. $97,000 spent to learn about homelessness. How do I tell a constituent of mine who is homeless that your government spent $97,000 learning about how he is homeless?
Through the chair, so the Government of Canada is investing billions of dollars in solutions to homelessness. We need the people who work for the Government of Canada to be connected on the ground to all the people who are doing the work, who are operating shelters, who are helping people into supportive housing. We want to make sure we're well informed and well connected to the large community of people who support people
Minister,
who are homeless.
My question is quite
that's
simple.
why
my
we had a
question
large
is very
attendance
simple,
there.
very narrow. How do I justify that expense to my constituent?
We need to be sure we are connected to the people who serve the homeless population across Canada. We need to make sure we're effective in rolling out our new Build Canada Homes program with supportive housing. There were a lot of meetings. There was a lot of information shared. There were a lot of relationships built with the people who are serving across Canada, the communities that are challenged with homelessness like yours. We want to make sure we're connected and doing the good work.
A lavish conference, travels, meetings upon meetings. It's not going to solve this gentleman's problem that I'm speaking about. Why not take that money? Why not take that money and instead of organizing meetings upon meetings, actually come into the riding and give it to the people?
Order.
The witness has answered the question many times, and it's relevant to the mandate.
It is not a point of order.
It's not a point of order.
Continue, Ms. Kobana, but I would remind members again to not speak over one another for the benefit of the interpretation. We need interpretation to conduct a meeting. You have the floor.
Clarify my question. Okay. I just think it's very hard to justify that expense to somebody who's struggling from homelessness and say that your government spent $97,000 learning about their homelessness. There is no justification. Switching topics, the Missing Middle Initiative told Canadians that, quote, the real crash is still ahead. New condo sales are down 89%, ground-oriented sales down 65%, guaranteeing an even deeper downturn in 2026 and beyond, end of quote. Do you agree with the industry experts that Canadians need to prepare for an even worse housing crisis?
Well, as I've said earlier, we are in a housing crisis that has been decades in the making. It's not something we solve overnight, but we have to be relentless in investing in affordable housing. Build Canada Homes is focused on non-market housing, and the Government of Canada has never had a laser focus on non-market housing. We now have a one-stop shop that is focused on delivering that affordable housing at scale. And that's a huge part of the housing crunch that we face. The market is facing real challenges in Vancouver and Toronto. And that is something that CMHC is helping with the apartment construction loan program to make sure that many of those developers can build rental housing on the projects that otherwise would not work as condos. The market goes through cycles, and we've been very fortunate as a country to have decades of the market being stable and growing.
Minister,
unfortunately, that's created
I
affordability
don't
challenges.
have a lot of time. If
and
I
right
may
now,
ask a follow-up
the affordability
question?
is improving across the country in terms of markets.
In the GTA specifically, housing starts are decreasing. We know that. My particular concern, and I do get calls from constituents of mine who work for different companies that manufacture their doors or the windows or the floors, is that their shifts are decreasing. They are having talks about shutting down. All that skilled labor is going to be lost. That productivity, that capacity, rather, is going to be lost. We are not moving at the speeds that you promised.
Kobana? You're well over your time. We will now thank you. Thank you, Minister. Madame Katrakis, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, and to the officials for being here this afternoon. For many of us on the committee, I'm sure many of us have worked in the private sector. And when I hear my colleagues, my honourable colleagues from the Conservative Party, talking about $97,000 investment for our very professional, very devoted public servants, attending meetings that are going to make them even better because they're hearing from specialists. And I know that...
I can't listen to this bootlicking. We got to skip ahead of her. Go right back to a con round again.
Referring to our builders, to our...
Give one short question to each side. Keep it under 2 minutes.
And then this would have been the last of the con rounds.
So we'll begin with Mr. Ho.
So, Minister, you're spending $219 million per year on a fourth housing bureaucracy, the so-called Build Canada Homes. And what does it do that the last three Liberal housing bureaucracies couldn't do? I mean, you're burning through the equivalent of $4 million per week. And this isn't money for housing or for municipalities. This is money just to pay the salaries of bureaucrats and other overhead. So I just want to get an understanding where that money is going.
Build Canada Homes is a new agency that is scaling up the investments in affordable housing across Canada, and it's offering to our builders, to our building partners, home building partners, a one-stop shop for them to advance their affordable housing projects as fast as they can.
What has this new Liberal bureaucracy achieved in the last week, would you say?
Well, we've already announced a whole set of projects, six locations across Canada on Canada Lands Company land, federal land.
That other bureaucracies that preceded it could not do.
He's calling the partisan.
Build Canada Homes is focused on affordable housing. The Government of Canada has not had an agency that's entirely focused on affordable housing for many decades. That's been spread among a number of different agencies and departments. And what we want to do is make sure we've got focus. We have a nimble organization that can get affordable housing built at scale as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible.
$219 million doesn't seem very nimble to me, or to the average Canadian taxpayer. Thank you.
Once, Minister, if you want to choose.
I think it will be a very efficient use of taxpayer dollars when you stack it up against the volume of affordable housing that is going to be built in these years to come. I think it'll be a great investment.
Thank you, Mr. Ho. Ms. Fancy for 2 minutes.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay. So basically what's happened here is we watched the Melanie Joly committee, the International Trade Committee. Sorry, that blew off the top of my head. And then while we were watching Joly's committee, this was live for an hour. But instead of us just sitting and watching this for another hour, I just skipped through all the Lib rounds. So we were basically able to get all the Conservative rounds in like one little go there. We were going to be live for 2 hours for this, but instead of since this happened already while we were watching Melanie Joly's committee, we could just go back and skip through some of the stuff. I would tune into OGGO, but if anything, we could have watched it during the first hour when they were talking about Stellantis. I don't think going and tuning into OGGO right now is anything too interesting. They've got the Treasury Board Secretariat there, the Department of Public Works, and they're really just talking about draft reports from 2024 to 2025. If we were going to tune into OGGO, it would have been like the first hour where they were more talking about the Stellantis response and the papers and stuff. So I think we can just call it here, to be honest. There's nothing to watch left in this committee because he's only here for another like 2 minutes, and then they suspend and get new witnesses. Because both ministers and both committees were only in for an hour. That's really all I wanted to catch was both committees with the ministers in. I was watching you post the clip. Yeah, that's what I'm going to go do right now. I'm going to go work on clipping some of the stuff from this morning. If you didn't... well, let's do the con rounds for OGGO. I guess we could. You mean from the first hour? Like 25 minutes of questions? I guess we could do that. We could flip back to the first hour and see what happened in OGGO while we were watching Joly and Robertson. We could just switch back to that. Because I actually kind of do want to see what happened there with the Stellantis stuff. So we could watch that. It won't be too long. We'll just flip through it.
We have agreed that.
Welcome, Ms. Perusa. It's good to have you join us today. As you are well aware, because you were watching committee last week, department officials told us that it was Stellantis who proposed the redactions and outlined why every one of them was necessary. You have now written a letter and in your opening remarks claimed that Stellantis never requested for the documents to be redacted. After this committee ordered the documents to be produced, who initiated the conversation regarding redactions?
Well, I can't speak for others' testimony. I can speak to the context and the process through which the agreements have been shared. The context is essentially, as I said in my opening remarks, the importance of maintaining confidentiality of commercially sensitive information. And that's the context that overlays almost like a lens on all of these agreements. And I believe that that's an objective that the government shares as well. So that's the context that goes over this. When the government, when we were advised that the agreement had been requested, the government provided some redactions, which we reviewed and agreed again, given that those redactions reflected our business information.
So how do you square your testimony today with the testimony that we received from ISED when they appeared? And I'm going to quote the response that we got. However, and I'm quoting, I can say that in our discussions with Stellantis, they outlined to us for every redaction of why they felt to be necessary to be protected commercially, and we were comfortable with the redactions that they proposed. So that's a little bit different than what you're telling us here today.
Thank you. And again, I can't speak to someone else's testimony to this committee. I can outline the context and the process through which we were engaged, and that is how the process went through in terms of redactions that were proposed, and we reviewed and consented. So essentially, it was a joint effort in terms of ensuring that our sensitive information is maintained confidential and redacted.
So I'm just going to go back then to the paragraph in the letter that you sent, where you didn't say that this was a joint effort. You said, to be clear, Stellantis did not propose or suggest any of the redactions applied to the version of the CIF agreement that the committee received from ISED. Does that sound like it was a joint process and that there was a going back and forth of what would be redacted and what wouldn't be redacted?
Again, in terms of the context of the request and the process, the government provided us with a copy of a redacted agreement. We reviewed those redactions and agreed that they protected our information appropriately.
Okay, I'm going to move on. Another question. Did ISED ever suggest sharing the fully unredacted contract with the committee?
It goes back to the lens that is always put both with ourselves and with ISED, that shared objective to ensure the confidentiality of our business information.
So they never at any point said, you know, these are parliamentarians, they have a right to see these contracts unredacted. Can we present them to the committee? Would you be comfortable with us presenting them to the committee unredacted?
Our objective, and as Stellantis has continuously maintained, any review of an agreement must be done in a confidential setting, and the protection of the information that's in there is critical.
So just trying to get an answer to the question that I've asked. did they ever suggest that parliamentarians should receive these contracts unredacted under those circumstances that you've just outlined?
We respect OGGO and your privilege in terms of reviewing the agreements, and that is why we did propose, and I see that you've now received the unredacted copies.
So I guess my next question is, so do you agree with their testimony?
I can only speak to my testimony and in terms of the process that I was engaged in.
Okay, well then in response to the question I asked about, I said ever sharing, suggesting that you share the fully unredacted contracts with parliamentarians. I'm going to assume that that is a no. Department officials told us they had back and forth conversations with Stellantis about the redactions. Is that correct?
They provided us the copy of the redactions. We responded that we found them to be appropriate, and then we had a further conversation with respect to those redactions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Mr. Gasparo, but I apologize before we do.
Okay, we'll skip ahead to a
we do, as we've had recently, our legal counsel, Mr. Berdar and Ms. Goche is with us today. We'll keep it informal. If you have questions for them specifically, feel free to address directly to them. You don't have to go through the chair or anything, so make use of them if you see fit. Mr. Gasparo, please, for 6 minutes.
Okay, yeah,
Thank you for waiting.
Have you...
Block. Contribute. They suspended? Is this in the first... It's only in the first 30 minutes. Did they only last 30 minutes? What happened right here?
No,
Maybe an interpretation issue, I'm assuming?
It's turning on by itself.
Tech issue?
And it says you are currently
We've suspended your time.
speaking.
We'll give you one more minute, but IT, I'm watching her. It is turning on and off by itself.
Yeah, a tech issue. Okay, so we'll see if we can skip ahead past that. Yeah, here's a con round. No, they went the full hour. Yeah, okay, I was just seeing what was going on there. It was a tech issue. Here we go.
Consider the entire CIF agreement that the committee's been given access to commercially sensitive and therefore must be kept confidential? The entire agreement, yes.
Well, for our perspective, any element that has either our investment plans or product plans or other information that's business sensitive, that must be maintained confidential.
Okay, so the entire contract isn't confidential?
I wouldn't say the entire contract.
Okay, because earlier in your testimony, you said that the government, Industry Canada, made some redactions that to protect commercially sensitive information, and you agreed that those redactions protected Stellantis's commercially sensitive information. Is that a fair statement?
I would say that they were appropriate.
Okay, so by default, that would mean that the rest of the contract is not commercially sensitive, and therefore, why should that not be available for us to question the government on the bona fides of this contract?
Oh, sorry. My understanding is that's the study that you're currently undertaking with respect to the agreement.
Yeah, but
no,
but
I'm sorry.
But by your own letter from Stellantis, you've said that you're giving us access to this document, and we can't discuss it. It's to be reviewed in camera, and that's the conditions, right? Like I can't go to a section right now and refer to it, despite the fact that you just said most of it isn't commercially sensitive. So it seems to me that the contract that was given to us for the last meeting that had commercially sensitive redactions that you've now agreed protect the commercially sensitive aspects of your business, those contracts should be available for members of parliament to use to hold the government to account, because they don't protect any confidential information, any commercially sensitive information.
The information that was redacted was the commercially sensitive information as indicated and as appropriate. With respect to the rest of the agreement,
but by default, the rest isn't commercially sensitive.
Not in the way of any sharing of any of our of Stellantis information.
Okay, thank you. That to me is very helpful. You do know that the other SIF agreement that Stellantis entered into and the special contribution agreement that Stellantis entered into, that was produced through access to information request, and it's actually hosted on the CBC website, so it's publicly available with commercially sensitive redactions. Is there any difference between that, which is publicly available, and this?
I can't speak to the SCA and the SIF agreement. The special contribution agreement is with Nexstar, which is a separate entity, which is not Stellantis, for one. And with respect to what was shared on CBC, again, I wasn't engaged at all in that process, so I'm not sure if that was through an ATIP, which sometimes, redacts more than what is shared with Parliament. I can't
sure.
comment.
It could redact. It could redact more, but it's now in the public sphere, right? It's on the CBC website to download. I've downloaded it. I've read it with redactions. So it seems to me that we have a version of this contract that was redacted to protect commercially sensitive information. Then the rest of the contract should be available for members of Parliament to use to hold the government to account. Do you agree or disagree with that?
I would suggest that would be a question for Industry Canada.
Or would it be a question for this committee?
It would be a question for this committee through Industry Canada.
Okay, thanks very much. The Industry Minister, just in question period and in House Commons, has said you're in breach of contract and they're going to sue you. Do you consider Stellantis to be in a breach of this contract?
I have not heard that, and no, we do not agree that we are in breach of contract.
Right. And she says she's going to sue you, but they haven't sued you yet, have they?
Again, I haven't seen any of her comments from today, so I can't comment on that.
But you're not aware that the government has actually sued Stellantis?
I've been here, and I haven't seen anything.
So if it hasn't happened in the last 2 minutes, it hasn't happened.
Point of order, Chair?
Thanks. Sorry, I was just saying thank you, Mr. Seaback. We'll go to Ms. Sudds after the point of order. Go ahead, please.
I simply want to verify, Mr. Seaback, whether he has a copy of the contract or not.
That's not a point of order, but we'll now go to Ms. Sudds, please, for 5 minutes.
Have a copy or not?
That's not a point of order, but please, Ms. Sudds, go ahead.
It's a relevant question, yeah.
It's not a point of order, but he does have a copy. I explained it at the very beginning of the meeting.
Oh, I must have missed that.
That's okay. Yes, he does.
Sorry, on that, Chair, at the beginning of the meeting, you had said that only permanent members of this
No, I
committee
did not say that. No. Sorry, we're just going to, we'll get to you, Ms. Sudds, in a moment. What I explained was, as per the motion, there would be designated people to have a copy. If someone had a copy today, they will continue to have that copy. Someone who doesn't have a copy today, for example, Ms. Jansen, will never have a copy. So should we ever come back to this study, whoever has a copy today will continue with that, which was the motion. Yes, it is. Yeah. We're going to continue with, I've explained it, we're going to continue with Ms. Sudds for 5 minutes.
Okay, we're going to skip past her.
Am I on? Yes. Continue to increasing it to find a solution.
Block.
Jobs out.
Probably still block.
From CBC
Conservative. Here we go.
The agreement policies, if as I've indicated, the agreement covers all our facilities, and we have been investing in Canada. We'll continue to invest in Canada and continue to be committed to Canada.
Donc, moi, ce que j'ai compris dans l'interprétation.
So what I understood in the interpretation is that you investing in Canada.
Sorry, I'm trying to skip past this. Still block.
Your jobs at Windsor.
Very much.
There we go. Conservative round should be here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to, there was a headline from CBC News back on November 3rd
Canada will start dispute resolution process over Stellantis jobs lost to the U.S. The Minister Joly was quoted in that article. Today, before the close of business, the government will take the next step under the contracts to recover Canadian taxpayers' money. This means that we will start the 30-day period of the formal dispute resolution process in order to bring back production at the Brampton facility. This is the start of the dispute resolution process, end quote. So November 4th to December 3rd is 30 calendar days. Have you guys entered into a dispute resolution process with the federal government?
As Minister Joly indicated, that she was considering the dispute resolution process. We have been in conversation with the minister, with the department, with respect to moving forward on a plan for Brampton.
Okay, and you said earlier that it's your view that you are not in breach of the contract. So, I mean, if the minister's saying you are, you're saying that you're not. I mean, how do we square that?
Again, I didn't see or hear her comments from today. I'll have to go back and take a look exactly at what she said. But to your point, no, we do not believe that we are in breach of the contract. We are honoring our commitments.
Okay, and just for clarity, she said it yesterday in question period, and she said it again today, so she has said it multiple times publicly on the record. One thing that I found fascinating last week at committee, we had the deputy minister come in, insinuate that the minister hadn't read the contract. He said everybody at the table, though, had read the contract, but then later he said he didn't read the contract. So I'm curious on your end, how many people have read the fully unredacted contract on the Stellantis end? Even if it's just a rough ballpark number, you don't have to give me the exact, but is it more than like 1 or 2 people, or how many people would review the contract?
Within
your organization?
Within our company? How many people?
Yeah, roughly how many people would view it?
I'm going to say, I'm trying to do a count. It would be myself, someone in legal, someone in finance. I'm going to say 5 or 6 have reviewed the entire agreement internally, like the entire agreement. There are sections, but with respect to who has knowledge of the full agreement, yeah, not that many have read through the entire agreement.
Okay, and then how many people would have access to even just partial elements of the contract?
Would be internally at Stellantis in
Correct.
terms of the agreement. Again, I don't have that number with respect to internally, because certainly internally, in terms of claims or in terms of legal review, there would be those departments that would focus on their sections of the agreement.
Okay, so fair to say a couple dozen people, probably at least, maybe more, would have access to at least certain portions of this contract internally?
Potentially.
Okay, interesting. As far as the did the government demand any job guarantees from Stellantis as part of the agreement?
You have the agreement, and there are various commitments that are spelled out in the agreement.
But not like a firm guarantee? Like, it was just roughly, this should create roughly 20, like, pick a number. I'm just going to use a random number. This contract's supposed to create X amount of thousands of jobs. Is that a commitment to the contract, or is it just kind of loose?
No, there are commitments in the agreement.
Is this a standard contract, or is this kind of a unique contract?
I couldn't say. I believe CIF agreements are fairly standard, but that would be a question for Industry Canada.
Thanks. We'll finish up with Ms. Rochford, please, for 5.
We thank you very much.
That's all the con rounds.
Pleasure to meet you. And so I was just wondering.
Okay, so there we go. Now we've covered everything. I think in short term, here I'll just play
How
this
many
so there's
dollars-
something playing. But I think in short term, what's happened here is we can't see the contracts because they were viewed in camera. So only the members of this committee who were there in camera to view the contracts know exactly what's in the contract, besides Stellantis and Melanie Joly and Department of Industry, the individuals who actually were a part of signing the contract years ago or whatever. The other problem is the threshold of the jobs guarantee is what conditions and parameters were set out in it. Like what we were asking before, is there 100% of those jobs need to be kept in Canada? Like what happens if some get laid off? You know what I mean? We don't know exactly the threshold there. And I have a feeling that Stellantis has definitely consulted legal on this. They can probably afford some pretty well-paid lawyers. And if they feel that they're not in breach of contract, well, I don't know. Liberal incompetence, I'm probably leaning on the side of Stellantis is probably not in breach of contract, unfortunately. So, it kind of sucks. Obviously, we don't want liberal incompetence to cost taxpayers $15 billion, but what are we supposed to do? If they're not in breach of contract, I don't think we're going to get our money back. I think Joly in the next 30 days is probably going to try and get the jobs to come back to Brampton, and she's going to try and push for that as much as possible. But I don't think she actually has any legal recourse in terms of what she said today is, oh, we're going to get the money back. I don't think we're getting that money back. So it's kind of a disappointment. It's much bigger than the STTC scandal, but at least with STTC there was more liberal corruption. This is just pure liberal incompetence. It's just stupidity running the government, and there's nothing really we can do about that. That's what happens when you have a democracy and you're able to vote in stupid people. Nothing really can change about that. But yeah, enough of me blabbering. That's it. We've covered what we wanted to cover for this afternoon committee. Obviously, you guys know we don't go live tomorrow. We don't go live on Fridays. So we've got some stuff on Monday. It'll be the last week. I haven't checked to see what committees we're covering, but there'll definitely be a lot of committees next week because it's the last week before, it's the last week before they go away for like the 6-week Christmas break. So next week should be pretty packed. Question period should be pretty busy. But that's it for today. We had a really busy day, lots of streams. So I appreciate you guys all tuning in and watching from 8 o'clock this morning. Also, thank you, Ficklenot, for the super chat. Really appreciate that. And we'll call it here, guys. I've got to go get some clips out. Like, if you didn't catch any of the stuff from this morning, I'm going to go get clips out from the committees, from question period and stuff. So if you didn't catch anything, you can just check back on the channel and it'll be there. So anyways, everybody have a fantastic rest of your evening. I'll see you guys on Monday for live streams, and also on the weekend I'll get some stuff out from stuff that we didn't cover during the week. I know there was a pretty good interview with Stephen Guilbeault on CTV. I saw that when it happened, but I never actually clipped it or anything, so there'll be a couple other things that probably come up on the weekend too. I bet you any money Melanie Joly is going to be on CTV as well. There'll be some press conferences with Carney and things like that. We're going to obviously hear about whether or not Carney's going to be meeting with Trump, but I think when he's there, he's just doing the FIFA thing, and Trump's just going to sideline him. He's not even going to talk to him, but we'll see. So still some stuff on the weekend, guys. Try and check back to the channel on Saturday and stuff and see if there's anything updated. But yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you guys Monday for live streams. Cheers, guys.